间必将遭到全面和彻底的失败。
主义的火炬照亮人类前行之路，不断崛起、不断扩大的国际影响力。
A day after the speech, the Australian government announces plans to build a nuclear-powered submarine base on the country's east coast. The cost? 10 billion Australian dollars. The base will facilitate the docking of nuclear submarines like this one. The sudden announcement of plans for the base is an acceleration of what was originally an 18-month evaluation process. The AUKUS agreement was signed between the US, UK, and Australia in September 2021. Under AUKUS, the United States and Britain will assist Australia in its acquisition of nuclear-powered submarines. How did ties between Australia and China get so bad? From 2009 to 2019, trade between China and Australia tripled, transforming China into Australia's largest trade partner. China has also emerged as Australia's largest source of international students, and Mandarin as Australia's second most spoken language.
Between 2009 and 2019, Australia's trade with China tripled. That was largely driven by this huge increase in demand for products, particularly commodities, that helped to fuel China's growth. Two-way trade between Australia and China was extraordinarily high. 40% of outbound trade from Australia went up north to Beijing. That's one of the highest levels of trade between advanced countries and even between any countries in the world.
In September 2021, AUKUS was formed.
Money for health and education! No war! This is what we're fighting for! No war!
Our world is becoming more complex, especially here in our region, the Indo-Pacific. This affects us all. The future of the Indo-Pacific will impact all our futures. And so, friends, AUKUS is born. A new enhanced trilateral security partnership between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. AUKUS, a partnership where our technology, our scientists, our industry, our defence forces are all working together to deliver a safer and more secure region that ultimately benefits all. The first major initiative of AUKUS will be to deliver a nuclear-powered submarine fleet for Australia.
The UK, Australia, and the US will be joined even more closely together, reflecting the measure of trust between us, the depth of our friendship, and the enduring strength of our shared values of freedom and democracy.
So AUKUS has broad bipartisan support in Australia. In fact, both the government that signed it and the opposition party have signaled that they are on board for this, and all three countries, Britain, the UK, and the United States, are working overtime to make sure that the way that they go about setting up the nuclear propulsion submarines does not enhance nuclear proliferation, and in fact might even be able to strengthen it by limiting it just to this technology and making sure that there are no bleed-on effects to nuclear weapons. That's not what this is, although there's a lot of disinformation in the system that this is a gateway to a nuclear weapons program, which both parties have said it is not, and they will not continue it if it is.
$10 billion to spend on nuclear submarines is a lot of money. Do Australians really believe that China is going to sail all the way down under and launch an offensive?
What's happened in the South China Sea has not stayed in the South China Sea. And as China has continued to build up their military forces, they've continued to push outward and further down and closer to Australia. So we've seen multiple attempts by the Chinese to do a similar spate of building that they conduct in the South China Sea in the South Pacific. We've seen discussions and talks about whether or not there would be a dual-use military commercial base in Papua New Guinea, in Vanuatu, and even just this past month in the Solomon Islands. All of these are much closer to Australia.
The AUKUS treaty is a very dangerous thing because Australia for all these decades has claimed itself to be a very proud member of the Non-Nuclear Proliferation Treaty, and a proud member of the South Pacific Nuclear-Free Zone, and as a result, they benefited hugely from this. And I think now, at urging of the United States and United Kingdom, the Australian government wants to deprive the Australian people their rare privilege of living in this bubble of nuclear-free South Pacific or protection of the nuclear-free non-proliferation treaty. This is dangerous for the Australian people as well as for countries and peoples in our part of the world.
Submarines are stealthy, but trade agreements are stealthier. So it's much better to protect security in this region by countries developing patterns of cooperation and interdependence, as we are going to do with the world's largest free trade agreement, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership that was launched in January 2022 with, by the way, Australia, Japan, South Korea, China, also as members of this trade agreement.
In Southeast Asia, a hotbed of US-China rivalry, the Quad has gotten a mixed response.
Southeast Asia in general has been more wary about the more muscular, security-oriented dimensions of the US Indo-Pacific strategy, and the Quad is one of that, or at least was one of that. I think their main concern with the Quad was that it would heighten tensions in the region, especially vis-a-vis China. I think the quadrilateral security dialogue has also positioned itself. It's moved away from its more militaristic elements to focusing on areas that ASEAN cares more about. So areas like pandemic recovery, and that by demonstrating a sensitivity to the region's needs, I think the position on the Quad dialogue has softened somewhat.
The Quad is somewhat of a mystery. If you talk to the members of Quad, they deny that it is an anti-China alliance. But everybody in the world perceives the Quad to be an anti-China alliance. And it creates this rather strange situation where the four countries deny that it is aimed against China, but the perception is that it is against China, which is why, if you notice, not many other East Asian countries have volunteered to join it. And so it's therefore important for the members of the Quad to actually explain what exactly is the end game of the Quad.
If you look at the last Quad foreign ministers' joint statement, ASEAN centrality was right up at the top. Everybody understands that the thing that brings the four Quad members together is their shared anxieties about China. But the Quad members also understand that the way they prove that they're worth siding with is by delivering public goods.